I'm 22 now, and a few months ago, my dad died suddenly of a heart attack. No warning. One minute he was helping my mom with groceries in the driveway, the next he was collapsed on the pavement. Gone. We weren't some perfect sitcom family, but he was a good man. He made corny jokes, always checked my tire pressure before long drives, and never once missed a birthday. So, yeah, I was crushed. We all were. My mom didn't stop crying for weeks. My older brother took it harder than any of us. He was Dad's shadow growing up. We held the funeral 2 days before my college finals. I left campus early and never went back. 3 weeks after we buried him, we got called in to review his will. I didn't expect anything big. My parents weren't wealthy. My mom worked at a library, and Dad was a mechanic. Everything they had was just regular. But he'd left us a video message, to be played in front of the lawyer and both of us kids. I thought it'd be something simple, a goodbye. Something comforting. It was the exact opposite. The video started with him sitting at his workbench in the garage. He looked pale, tired, like maybe he knew something was coming. His voice was soft, serious. He didn't smile. He said, "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And there's something I've hidden from you, something I never had the courage to explain in life." The room went silent. My heart dropped. He said it was about me. He said he wasn't my biological father. My brain couldn't process it. I thought I misheard. Then he said it again. "You're not mine by blood." At that moment, I remember feeling like I wasn't even in my body. I was watching my mom bury her face in her hands. My brother staring blankly at the screen. I felt cold all over. He said I was born during a rough time in their marriage, that they separated for a short while, and my mom had been with someone else. When she found out she was pregnant, she didn't know who the father was. But she chose to stay with him, my dad. And he chose to raise me like I was his own. He said he never wanted me to know, but he also couldn't take the truth to his grave. He said I deserved to know where I came from. And then the video cut out. The lawyer quietly slid over an envelope, my real father's name, and a copy of my birth certificate. But that wasn't even the craziest part. Inside the envelope was a letter addressed to me, from my real dad. How he knew this would be in the will, or how my dad even got this letter from him, I have no idea. But what the letter said, that was when things really fell apart. I stared at the envelope for what felt like an hour. My hands were trembling when I finally opened it. I kept telling myself not to jump to conclusions, not to assume anything. Maybe it was a formality. Maybe it was short. But as I unfolded the pages, I saw right away, this was no generic note. It was handwritten. Long, deeply personal. It started with, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to believe me. But if you're reading this, I guess the time has come." I froze at that line. What was there to forgive? I hadn't even met this man, and already the guilt was pouring off the paper. He said his name was Chris. He and my mom had been high school friends, reconnected briefly during the split from my dad. According to him, they were together for just a few weeks, but in that time, things got serious fast. He thought they were building something. He said she'd told him she wasn't sure if her marriage could be saved. But then, without warning, she ended things. She stopped answering his calls, blocked him, moved back in with my dad. A month later, he got a text from an unknown number, "Don't contact me again. It's better this way. Please respect that." He tried to reach out one last time, but got nothing. Years passed. He got married, had 2 daughters. But he said something never left him, the feeling that there had been something left behind. He always suspected I existed. But he never had proof. Until 3 years ago. He didn't explain how exactly, but he said he'd found out. He learned about me. Found out my name, my school. He even included a photo he'd printed of me from a track meet I didn't know was photographed. That part made my skin crawl. I didn't remember the photo being taken. I was just standing on the sidelines, mid-laugh, water bottle in hand. It was the kind of picture someone would take if they were watching you from a distance. He said he almost contacted me that day. Said he parked outside my school, sitting in his car for over an hour. But in the end, he drove away. He'd made a promise to my mom that he'd stay out of my life. But he left the letter anyway. Just in case. Just in case my dad ever told me the truth. That meant my mom had kept it from me all these years. She knew. She knew he existed. And so did my dad. They'd both agreed to bury it forever. I set the letter down and looked across the room at my mom. She couldn't even meet my eyes. My brother looked at her too, like he'd just seen her for the first time. No one said anything. The lawyer excused himself, quietly, and left us alone in that cold, silent office. And that's when the questions started clawing their way into my brain. Not just about Chris, but about everything. Why had they kept this from me for 22 years? Why now? Why that moment? And most terrifying of all? If this was just the beginning, what else were they hiding? We drove home in near silence. My brother kept glancing at me like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how. My mom sat in the front seat, staring out the window, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap I could see her knuckles whitening. I didn't speak a single word to her on the way back. As soon as we walked into the house, I went straight to my room and locked the door. I could hear her pacing downstairs, then sitting, then getting up again. The guilt was probably eating her alive, but I couldn't bring myself to care in that moment. I wasn't angry. I was numb. My dad had just died. My world had already been torn apart. Now I was supposed to process the fact that he wasn't even my biological father? That my real dad was some man named Chris who had been watching me from a distance? A man my mother had kept hidden like a dirty secret? The worst part was, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a decision. A lifelong decision to build my identity on something false. And for what? To protect me? Or to protect her? The next morning, I finally confronted her. I didn't plan it. I just walked into the kitchen while she was drinking coffee, and the words tumbled out before I even knew what I was saying. She didn't deny it. She admitted everything. Yes, she'd been with Chris during the separation. Yes, she found out she was pregnant but couldn't be sure who the father was. And yes, she chose not to tell him. My dad had already agreed to take her back. He said he'd raise the baby like his own, no matter what. She said Chris was complicated. That he had problems. When I asked what that meant, she went quiet. Said it wasn't her story to tell. That was the part that stuck with me. Not her affair. Not even the fact that she'd lied for 2 decades. It was that line, "It's not my story to tell." Like she was still protecting him. Or protecting herself. She begged me not to contact Chris. Said it would only cause damage. To his family. To me. To everyone. But I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. And that photo. And the idea that someone had been watching me, for years, thinking I was their daughter, but staying away. Out of guilt? Or something darker? And then, the next night, I found the second letter. Hidden at the bottom of one of Dad's tool drawers in the garage. It was from Chris, too. But this one wasn't addressed to me. It was written to my dad. And the date on it? 3 months before he died. The paper was yellowing, creased, and folded like it had been handled a dozen times. The envelope had no stamp, meaning it had been delivered by hand. And the handwriting matched the one in the first letter, Chris. But this time, it wasn't gentle. It wasn't full of apologies or reflections. This letter had heat in it, like someone writing in the middle of an emotional storm. It started with, "I kept my distance because that's what you asked for. But you don't get to keep lying to her forever. You don't get to erase me and pretend I never existed." Every line after that was sharper than the last. Chris accused my dad of manipulating the situation. Said he knew the child might not be his from the beginning but played hero and rewrote the story so everyone saw him as the victim. He said my mom had been confused, that she wanted time, but my dad pressured her into cutting contact. And then one line made my skin crawl. "You said if I showed up again, you'd make sure she never wanted to know me. But she's old enough now. And I won't stay away much longer." It sounded like a threat. Not the kind you make with fists, but the kind you make with truths. With power. I didn't know what to think. I'd spent my entire life seeing my dad as this humble, kind man. The one who fixed broken things. The one who never raised his voice. But suddenly, this letter painted him as controlling. Someone who buried secrets so deep they festered. The letter ended with, "She has a right to know who she is. You had your chance to do the right thing. Now I'm taking mine." And that was dated just 3 months before my dad dropped dead in the driveway. I sat there in the dark garage, letter in my lap, my fingers shaking. What if Chris had come back? What if they'd argued? What if there was more to my dad's death than we thought? I never questioned it before. A heart attack. Sudden, tragic, but believable. But now I was questioning everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up the address that was on the original envelope from Chris's letter to me. It was 2 towns over. Less than an hour away. And that's when I made the decision. I was going to meet him. No matter what my mom said. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want another sit-down talk with my mom, or another warning about protecting the family. I needed to see Chris with my own eyes. I needed to hear the truth from him, not filtered through grief or guilt or 2 decades of silence. His address was in a quiet neighborhood, tucked between a daycare and a funeral home, weirdly enough. I don't know what I expected, Maybe a man sitting in a leather chair surrounded by cigar smoke and regret. But the house was normal. A little worn down. Kids' toys on the lawn. A car in the driveway that hadn't been washed in a year. I rang the doorbell before I lost the nerve. It wasn't Chris who answered. It was a girl, maybe 13. Long, brown hair and curious eyes that looked way too much like mine. For a split second, we both stared at each other, confused. I didn't know what to say. She blinked and called out, "Dad, someone's here." When he stepped into the doorway, my throat closed. He looked just like me. Not just in the nose or the eyes, but something in the posture, the expression. It was like seeing a parallel version of myself, older, heavier, but undeniably connected. For a minute, I felt like I was looking in a warped mirror. He knew who I was right away. Didn't ask my name. Didn't need to. He just whispered, "You came." I didn't hug him. He didn't try. There was too much distance. Too much weight between us. But he stepped aside and let me in. The house was cluttered but clean. Lived in. There were photos on the wall, him, his wife, 2 daughters. No empty frames. No missing space where I should have been. I didn't belong there, and I felt it instantly. We sat at the kitchen table. He poured me water. I didn't drink it. He didn't waste time. He told me he'd written the letter years ago and given it to my dad personally. Said he didn't want to fight anymore, but he needed to be heard. He wanted my dad to tell me the truth. And if he wouldn't, then Chris would. But that meeting, he said it didn't go well. My dad threatened him. Said if he came near me, he'd make sure Chris's family knew things he'd kept quiet for years. I asked him what that meant. That's when the smile dropped from Chris's face. He said my dad had been holding something over him. Something from their past. A story involving a girl. A party. Something that happened when they were teenagers. Something that, if ever brought to light, could ruin Chris's life. He never gave me details. He just said my dad used it to keep him quiet. I didn't know what to believe. Was my dad the kind of man who would threaten someone with a decades-old secret? Or was Chris lying to make himself look like a victim? I was spiraling. Then Chris said something that froze me to the bone. "I didn't come back to take you from him. But I needed you to know you came from me too. It wasn't about love. Or redemption. Or regret. It was about claiming me." And in that moment, I realized something. He didn't want a daughter. He wanted to settle a score. When I got home, the house was dark. I figured Mom was in bed. She'd been avoiding me since the first letter, giving me space, or maybe just hiding from the fallout she helped create. But when I stepped inside, my brother was sitting on the couch in the dark. Just a single lamp on, his face lit like a ghost. He didn't even say hello. Just asked, "Where were you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He nodded, like he already knew. Then he patted the couch beside him, and I sat. I hadn't cried the entire day, not at Chris's house, not in the car, not when I saw that girl who looked like she could have been my sister. But the second I sat next to him, I wanted to sob. I didn't, though. Because he was holding something. A small black USB drive. He said he'd been going through Dad's garage again, same drawer where I'd found the second letter. He thought maybe there was more hidden. And he was right. Behind the false back of the bottom drawer, taped under the tool tray, was a flash drive. No label. No password protection. Just a single video file on it. I asked if he watched it. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down at his hands and said, "You need to see it for yourself." I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed not to open it. But I took it upstairs, plugged it into my laptop, and hit play. And the second I saw what was on the screen, I felt like the air had been sucked from my lungs. It was a video of my dad. From about 4 months before he died. He was in his shop, sitting on the stool, same shirt I remembered him wearing on my birthday last year. He looked stressed, like something had been eating away at him. He spoke quietly, but every word hit like a hammer. He talked about Chris. He said Chris was poking around again. That he was sending messages. Asking questions. Showing up near my school. And then, he said something I'll never forget. "If anything happens to me, if I die suddenly, I want someone to know I didn't just drop dead. Chris doesn't want a daughter. He wants to take me down with him." My heart was pounding. My dad was afraid of him. He didn't give details. He didn't name names. But he ended the video by looking straight at the camera and saying, "If she ever finds this, please tell her." I didn't lie to hurt her. I lied to protect her. I sat there for a long time after it ended. Just staring at the screen. It wasn't proof. Not really. There was no evidence Chris had done anything illegal. But it was clear my dad felt hunted. And now, for the first time, I wasn't just mourning the man I lost. I was terrified of the man who might have wanted him gone. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my dad's face in that video. The tension in his voice. The way he paused before saying Chris's name, like just speaking it felt dangerous. He wasn't just scared. He was warning me. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe my dad had just been paranoid. Maybe the years of keeping a secret wore him down. But deep in my gut, I knew. People don't record videos like that unless they feel like something's closing in. By morning, I'd already made up my mind. I had to go back. But this time, I wasn't walking through the front door like some long-lost daughter. I wanted answers, and I didn't trust Chris to give them to me. So I drove to his neighborhood again, parked down the block, and waited. It was Saturday. His wife left with the younger daughter around 10 a.m. for what looked like a dance class. The older one was on the porch with headphones on, reading. I stayed in my car until I saw Chris walk out the front door with a trash bag, toss it in the bin, and disappear back inside. Then I moved. I slipped around the back of the house. I didn't even know what I was looking for: papers, letters, anything. I felt insane. But I couldn't let this go. The basement door wasn't locked. I slipped inside quietly. It was cluttered, dusty, full of storage bins and tools. Nothing obvious. But then I saw a filing cabinet shoved in the corner, half buried under old boxes. Locked, of course. But the drawer above it wasn't. Inside were papers, bills, envelopes, receipts, and one manila folder with my name written on it in ink. I grabbed it with shaking hands. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Of me. From different years, different places. Me at a high school track meet. Me leaving a grocery store. Me sitting outside a coffee shop with my friends. Some were printed, some were just screen captures from social media. But others were taken from a distance. Behind trees. Across streets. Candid. Private. I felt sick. Violated. And then, near the bottom of the stack, I saw a page with a list of usernames, social accounts I didn't recognize. But when I looked closer, I realized they'd all followed me at some point. He hadn't just been watching me from afar. He'd been tracking me online. Pretending to be strangers. Seeing what I posted, what I liked, who I spent time with. This wasn't some innocent curiosity. This was obsession. I heard a door creak upstairs. My breath caught in my throat. I shoved the folder into my backpack and bolted for the back door. I didn't stop running until I was back in my car, engine roaring, tires squealing as I pulled away from the curb. By the time I got home, my hands were still shaking. My brother was pacing the driveway. He looked at my face and asked, "What did you do?" I told him. I showed him everything. And we both realized something terrifying at the same time. This wasn't just about secrets or guilt or messy family history. This was about a man who had been keeping tabs on me for years. And I had no idea what he wanted next. I didn't wait this time. As soon as I stepped into the house, I called out for my mom. My brother followed behind me, still clutching the manila folder. His jaw was clenched like he was trying not to explode. We weren't even sure how to start. We just knew we couldn't keep this buried another minute. She came down the stairs slowly, like she already knew. Like she'd been dreading this exact moment. I held the folder up without a word and dropped it onto the kitchen table. She didn't open it. She didn't even touch it. She just stared at it like it was radioactive. I asked her one question: "How long have you known he was watching me?" And then something inside her shattered. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She just broke down in this ugly, shaking kind of way, knees buckling, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her body together. She kept saying the same thing over and over. I tried to stop it. I thought it would end. I thought he was gone. My brother and I just stood there, stunned. What wasn't she telling us? She finally sat down and told us everything. Years ago, before I was even born, Chris wasn't just some guy she dated. He was intense. Controlling. Obsessive. She tried to end things cleanly, but when she told him she was reconciling with my dad, he didn't take it well. He started showing up places. Following her after work. Leaving notes on her car. When she got pregnant and went back to my dad, she cut him off completely. Blocked him, changed numbers, told no one. She never even told her parents. The letter he sent when I was born? She burned it. Then, years later, he resurfaced. Not in person, but online. She started getting anonymous messages. Updates about me, my school awards, my track times, even a mention of a doctor's visit I'd had when I was 12. The kind of things only someone watching from a distance would know. She confronted my dad, terrified. That's when he stepped in. Met with Chris, told him to disappear, or else. My dad never told her the details, just that it was handled. She believed him. Wanted to believe him. And for a while, it was quiet. Until 4 months before the heart attack. That's when the messages started again. More personal this time. He knew where I worked, what time I got home. He mentioned the make and model of the car I was learning to drive. That's when my dad made the video. That's when he started hiding things, in drawers, in USBs, in folders buried beneath tools. My mom never thought I'd find any of it. She wasn't protecting Chris. She was trying to protect me. But she was too late. Because now I knew everything. And worse, now Chris probably knew that I knew. That folder had been in his basement. He must have realized it was gone. And if he was willing to follow me from the shadows all these years, what would he do now that the lights were finally on? I barely slept that night. Every time the wind hit the windows, I jolted awake. Every car passing on our street made me flinch. I kept replaying everything, Chris's face, the photos, my dad's video, my mother's breakdown. None of it felt real, but my gut told me things were about to get worse. And I was right. The message came at 4:17 a.m. No subject line. Just an email. From a name I didn't recognize, but the address was burned into my brain the second I saw it. The same one on the envelope that came with the original letter. Chris. It was short. Just 2 sentences. You took something that didn't belong to you. I was willing to stay quiet, until now. And then, underneath, an attached photo. It was me, standing in the driveway yesterday, holding the folder, talking to my brother. Taken from across the street. Probably from a car. Maybe from the trees. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't just being watched in the past, he was watching me now. I ran to wake my brother and showed him the message. He didn't even speak, just grabbed his phone and started calling the police. But deep down, I already knew what they'd say. He hadn't technically broken any laws. No direct threats. No trespassing. Just a photo and a few vague words. Creepy? Absolutely. Criminal? Not enough. By sunrise, a police officer was standing in our living room, taking notes, nodding sympathetically. He said the best they could do was document it and suggested we install cameras and keep our distance. We already had cameras. That's how we found the next thing. My brother rewound the feed from the driveway. And at 4:11 a.m., 6 minutes before the email came, we saw it. A dark figure standing across the street. No movement. No approach. Just standing there. Watching. The camera didn't catch a clear face, but I didn't need one. It was him. Chris wasn't just trying to be seen anymore. He wanted us to know he was there. He wanted us to feel helpless. And it worked. For the first time in my life, I was afraid to leave the house. Afraid to open the blinds. Afraid of what else he was planning. And one question kept looping in my head, over and over. What if my dad didn't die of a heart attack at all? After that night, everything in me changed. I couldn't focus, couldn't eat. I barely spoke to anyone, even my brother. All I kept thinking was, what if he killed my dad? What if I've been mourning a lie? The official cause of death was a heart attack, sudden cardiac arrest. No autopsy was ordered. My dad had no major health problems, but sometimes that happens, right? People die unexpectedly all the time. Still, something didn't sit right. Not anymore. I started digging. My dad's death certificate. The paramedic report. The 911 transcript. My mom had a copy of everything, tucked in a folder she hadn't touched since the funeral. One detail stuck out. The EMTs had noted a strange chemical smell on his clothing. It wasn't highlighted. Just mentioned in passing. At the time, they assumed it came from his workbench. He was always covered in oil or some kind of cleaner. But it had been strong enough that they'd made a note of it. I googled everything I could think of. Chemical smell heart attack, toxins and cardiac arrest, poisons that mimic heart failure. I fell into a rabbit hole I didn't know how to climb out of. And that's when I found it. There are certain compounds, bitter, colorless, impossible to detect without specific tests, that can induce cardiac arrest. Some of them? Found in industrial products. Solvents. Cleaners. Easy to get. Easy to use. And almost impossible to trace unless you're looking for them. I took the folder, my dad's old medication list, and the EMS report to a private medical examiner in a nearby city. I told him everything. Not the stalker part, not at first. Just that I had doubts. I needed someone to re-review the findings with fresh eyes. It took a week, 7 days of agony. Then the call came. The examiner told me that based on the report and symptoms, and the lack of an autopsy, he couldn't be sure. But there were enough inconsistencies to raise flags. And if there had been any foreign substance used, even a small dose, it likely would have been missed unless it was specifically tested for. He paused before ending the call and said, "I can't give you a cause of death. But I can tell you this, I don't think it was natural." And just like that, it felt real. It wasn't a heart attack. Or at least, not one that happened on its own. I went to the police again. This time, they listened. Because we had evidence now. Chris's letters. His photos. The emails. The camera footage. The obsessive tracking. The threats. And finally, the forensics team started the process to petition for an exhumation. It's still ongoing. These things take time. They warned me there might not be anything left to find after this long. But they're taking it seriously now. And Chris? He's gone. Disappeared the day after I went to the police. Quit his job. His house is empty. His wife and daughters? They had no idea. The woman he married, the kids I thought were my half-sisters? They've gone into hiding. He left them behind. Like he left everything else. My mom is hollow. My brother barely talks anymore. The man we grew up loving might have died at the hands of the man I share blood with. That's the part one can't stomach. I don't know if Chris will ever be found. Maybe he's halfway across the country. Maybe he's watching again. I don't let myself think about it too long. All I know is this. My dad, my real dad, wasn't the man who helped create me. He was the man who chose me. Who protected me, even when it meant lying. Even when it meant carrying secrets that destroyed him from the inside out. And in the end, he might have died trying to keep me safe from the one man I never should have met. I don't know how this story ends. Maybe there's a trial. Maybe there's justice. Or maybe this is it, a warning carved into my bones. That family isn't who made you. It's who never stopped saving you.